machine learning and deep learning and AI to transform the data that they have into information and into knowledge. So you can recognize that it's a certain user. You can recognize that it's from a certain device, and it's actually clicking something. But it's not transforming it into an insight, and that's where still a challenge for us to link the user behavior and the mindset to that certain knowledge and information.
All right. I am here with Tim Thijsse. I'm Claire from Experimentation here. I'm here with Tim Thijsse. He's a senior CRO consultant at Orange Valley. Today we'll be talking about the evolution of CRO and the importance of incorporating qualitative research into company-wide processes. So thanks, Tim, for being on the podcast with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with a bit about you and your background, like what brought you into the world of CRO as it relates to what we'll be chatting about.
Okay. Yeah, so it all started, I think, around 2005 when I started as an interaction designer for a serious gaming company. I just graduated from the Art Academy in Rotterdam, Willem de Koning Academy, and I was focusing on interaction design, and I was making serious games for the fire department and for the Marines, and it's like I was responsible for thinking about the interaction with the mouse and then translate that to an action, for instance, like using a chainsaw in a 3D environment. So that's where I started with the thinking about the interaction with the computer, interaction with the mouse, and how can you optimize that, and also the user interface, where they click, etc., etc. But that was still a bit focused on how does it look like, how is the interaction going, not really on CRO, right? So after that, I worked for a company that's called North of Uitgevers, so that's the publishing agency, and I was working for the mathematic books in the Netherlands for the primary school, and I had to translate those the offline exams to online exams. So I was really focusing on that for the first, I think, 8 years of my career, and after I've been working for an internet agency in Antwerp as well, Internet Architects, it was called. I was responsible for creating the design systems for their clients and making websites for sites like Carrefour and Nike. And I returned back and I worked for the insurance company. And then I became a product owner for websites for insurance companies in healthcare. It already shifted a bit from actually working on the interaction design into managing and thinking about the needs of the customer, but also thinking about the stakeholders within the company. And that's where it became interesting for me, but also less interesting because I'm not really working with the websites anymore. So I was really doing more project management and managing people instead of thinking about what should be on the websites. From that point, I decided I wanted to go back into the field and I wanted to start with the so-called UX design role, which didn't exist in 2000. But then in a couple of years later, there was a new role called UX designer, which really fitted me as a glove because I was really focusing on visual and how it looked like and interpret that for the customer experience. That was really awesome. And that's where I really got in touch with CRO actually. So at that time, Tom Wesseling was still very active as the directing role there. together with Tom van der Berg, who was working in my team for clients like Van der Valk, Vodafone Ziggo, KPN. I started working for Online Dialogue, and I got in touch with the CRO, the psychological aspects of persuasive designs and nudging. So I got in touch with the Cialdini principles and the conversion pyramid, etc., etc. So I really got excited by how you can help the users in going to the next step, and not only doing that visually but also with the message that you're sending out as a
Mhm.
website or as a company. At that time I still had epilepsy, so I used to have epilepsy since I was, I think, 8,
Oh
so for
wow.
quite a long time.
Hmm.
And I got dizzy like every day, and if I
Wow.
was really active and if I was sporting, I could even have blackouts. So yeah, it was a time where I was really focusing on my health and seeing if we can get treatment for it. And I was able to do an operation where they treat me from. They removed the source of the epilepsy from my brain, and yeah,
Wow.
and yeah, and
Oh,
since
that's
then
crazy.
I didn't have any seizures at all. But I was convinced that CRO was something I really wanted to focus on, and that's when I started to um, help other companies with setting up CRO programs.
You've been working in CRO kind of over the evolution of it. So I'd love to hear, how has CRO evolved in your opinion, or from your perspective, and where do you see it kind of going in the near future? Actually, kind of a third part to that question is I saw that we attended the same event on LinkedIn about GPT and how what its uses are in experimentation.
Yeah,
So I would
yeah,
love
yeah,
to. I mean, it's a super hot topic right now, so I would love to hear kind of how you see what role you see that playing, in the
yeah.
future of CRO.
The future of CRO, and we have a lot of specialists in the field. For instance, Tom Wesseling, um, saying that we have to focus on a culture of experimentation, and then you have Emmanuel da Costa saying that zero is dead, and that we don't have to focus on zero. And if you read those statements, it might be contradictory, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, in the essence, they're stating exactly the same. And what they're saying is that um, it's not about being zero. It's not about a zero team that you have to put somewhere inside a company and that you have to train. And it's not about that you have to decide how you set up your CRO, right? You might be a centralized team with a multiple disciplinary team focusing on CRO, and it might be a decentralized team where you have different working fields and they all have their own CRO specialist. Or you have a center of excellence and you just have power users in those teams, right? So that might also be a certain setup. But Don Wesseling is saying there need to be a culture of experimentation, and what he means by that is that you have to change a certain mindset of everybody inside the company. And what Emmanuel is saying is the zero is dead. So it's not only zero; it's like the mindset of experimentation and always be optimizing that is important.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
And I mean, getting too caught up in the acronym CRO is dangerous as well. But what kind of potential challenges do you think companies might face when, trying to adopt an experimentation mindset, or as being one person trying to encourage the company to adopt an experimentation mindset?
Yeah.
And how can we overcome, or how can companies overcome those challenges?
There are challenges in three different fields. So the first one is your strategy. So I will come back to that later. The second one is operation. So how do you execute it? And the third one is uh, 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 well the technical part, right? So then you come with AI, etc., etc. But also the challenge with first first party data and cookies, client side cookies being gone.
Mhm.
And if I'm starting with the first one, the strategy part is it's really important to understand as a company that you have to decide what your program or your optimization program should focus on. Is it on transformation? So do you want to learn from it? Do you want to optimize and improve your services and products? Or is it really focusing on transaction? So you really want to have more conversion rate. You want to have more people going to the next phase in your user journey, etc., etc. So if you can decide what you want to focus on as a company, you can also see that most of the time transaction is focused on short term, and transformation is
Exactly.
focused on long term. So if that's program that you're running or that optimization strategy that you're having is not in sync with the goals of the company and the metrics of the companies as well, I come back to that later, is um, yeah, then you're already losing your battle. So besides being in sync with the roadmap of your company, with the
Mhm.
roadmap of also the product teams, it's also important to have a common understanding on for what metrics that you want to focus on. So if you're focusing on transaction, then most of the time it's conversion rate.
Mhm.
Transformation might be a bigger goal, right? NPS, CSAT, customer average score, more focusing on the total experience. And I'm seeing now that it used to be a CRO team focusing on web, and then maybe a growth team focusing on email or other channels. And now it's expanding. So it's not only the quantitative data, but also the qualitative data that's becoming more important.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm definitely passionate about and something that I use on it, very heavily in my CROs or my testing strategies is surveying customers and, pre-purchase polls, stuff like that, or really give you like the reasons why people might not be purchasing, aside from just seeing that they're not.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's definitely important. So how do you, I mean, aside from specifically testing strategies, how do you find companies incorporating like qualitative insights into their overall um, optimization or experimental mindset?
So Beerwolf didn't really have had a customer centric approach, right? They really had a profit focused goal. Um, but they changed their mission and vision into being more of an experience, also having it the home draft machine at home being a more total experience. They also were focusing on different metrics and having a discussion with the uh, um, with management. They decided to focus on the NPS score. So NPS score is of course a marketing metric, a net promoter score. It's not really my favorite metric, but I think it's something that multiple teams can work with. And that's even more important than the actual metric that you have, is having a common metric with different teams. Because if you have your silos, which in my opinion still exist in a lot of companies, most of the time they have their own KPIs and their own metrics. And that's where they're
Mhm.
focusing on. And if that KPI is not contributing or might be even contradictory to the other the silo, then it's never going to work to work together to have a total experience. So if you have a common KPI, then you can both focus on that and have more interaction within those two teams or other teams on how to cooperate with that and how to work with each other. And that's the next step where you also can see a shift in the type of experiments that are coming, because we had like last year and also this year, but it's already changing a little bit, is that we had really channel focused experimentation. That's how I'm calling it. I'll be giving a talk on Digital Marketing Live as well about the different types of experimentation that I see coming. But we used to have only channel based, right? They have email that's doing A/B testing. Yeah, for instance, website that's doing A/B testing, but not really the interaction between each other because they both have different targets. Now, if you bring those KPIs or targets together, they then there starts a discussion on how to improve it, and then you see that there's going to be experiments running on multi-channel level. And that's where it becomes interesting to see that it's not really being CRO and conversion focused on the website and conversion or click-through rate focused on email, but it's getting wider, and that's why it's becoming the customer experience optimization, and that's where CRO is going to. So CRO is actually still the mentality of experimentation, um, but CXO is being a broader way of experimenting within channels, but within user faces, etc. And then then you can or start even with journey orchestration. So think about a certain kind customer would like to be contacted differently. So you can do a different approach. That's where data comes in. And that's really important to have the right data to offer the best experience.
Right. So you said CXO, that's customer experience optimization versus CRO.
The optimization is never going to leave, right? But the conversion rate focus is. So that's why it's now the biggest focus of companies is CXO, which is customer experience optimization. And it's looking in a broader perspective on how to optimize within the company and not only within the silos that they have.
Super interesting. So, in terms of, the new era of AI and machine learning, where do you see that kind of fitting into this customer experience optimization? Or do you see it helping in any way in the qualitative aspect?
Yes, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So I'm playing with AI as well. So I'm just seeing what it can do with customer reviews of clients, to see how we can apply different AI solutions. For instance, use topic modeling, where you let AI decide what topics are important, and sentiment analysis to also see if AI can recognize the sentiment in a certain review to get an overview of what topics might frustrate customers and what topic users really liked. So that's where you can focus and can understand what your USPs are and what your pain points are based on the feedback of your customers. Now, that's very interesting to focus on and to see how you can get that qualitative data um, in the same track or the same way you would treat the quantitative data. And last year and the year before, were already a lot of tools using um, machine learning and deep learning and AI to transform the data that they have into information and into knowledge. So you can recognize that it's a certain user, you can recognize that it's from a certain device, and it's actually clicking something. But it's not transforming it into an insight. And that's where still a challenge for us to link the user behavior and the mindset to that certain knowledge and information. And that's where the actionable insights come in, where you can act upon as a company.
I 100% agree. I think this might be, um, uh, you know, controversial, but I do think in all the fields of marketing, I think CRO and optimization are one of the like safest industries in terms of like being replaced by an AI, just because it still requires so much human interaction and decision making and interpreting of like the insights that AI provides.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a bit. Um, of course, it's a shame that some people might need to change their habits in order
Mm-hmm.
to still keep their jobs. But yeah, it is the world is changing, right? There's a certain wave coming where you need to adapt, or you're just lacking and falling behind. So it's really important as a company to um, play and explore the new functionalities and the new possibilities that AI has to offer. And it's not that you have to really focus on everything that matters, or that is, I mean, that is related to AI, right? Some solutions work and some solutions might not work. So you have your mid journey and your visualization AIs that might not even be interesting for you as a company. But if you're focusing on ChatGTP and you have actually have a dialogue with your customers, and you can improve that dialogue, or improve the speed of that dialogue and help them, then it's of course very interesting to focus on how you can reduce the amount of time that you have to spend into communicating with the customer.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, let's circle back to the um, evolution of a CRO towards like an experimentation culture. So you said step one is to kind of get all of the teams working together on a common KPI that's directly relevant to the success of the business. What would you say like step two and beyond would be after that?
I think that Lucas Vermeer stated it very well in one of his podcasts. Uh, that it's not always something that you have to demand from above, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
setting a common KPI, a common metric, is something that has to be decided from management or C level, where you can have something to focus on. But next to that, there's also the bottom to top approach that you have, that you can do as well. And that's where it becomes interesting to see if you can store those insights not only in your A/B testing tool, but store them something that is approachable for the entire company to use. So next to having an optimization platform, you also need to create an I'm calling it an insight platform. So if you create a platform where not only the insights, and particularly saying insights and not results, right? Where the insights are coming into a platform and it's approachable for everybody, from, for instance, your growth marketing team, uh, but it's also getting qualitative insights from your research team or your UX team, then it creates a bigger understanding that everybody is trying to learn something, and that insights platform is the tool to start with. And if you want to create something, it's interesting to see what is already available and what other teams already have
Mm-hmm.
focused on. Is it a topic that's already been researched by in a different team? Is it something that you can utilize? Are there insights in certain approaches for customers? Does the other team already has personas, right? That might even be different sometimes. So yeah, that's the bottom up approach, where you create awareness of a learning platform, and that everybody can contribute.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable and something I relate to. I've noticed, I've had experience a lot of times with just siloed learning. So, paid teams learning something from their ads, A/B testing, and what keywords are working, what language is working really well, and it not being communicated to the web team in their copywriting, and vice versa. So, I think making insights that come from all of these different research avenues available company wide is super valuable to everyone, for sure. And I definitely don't think that it's practiced enough. What are some ways other than, surveying people, outside of kind of the web space, which is what I personally am familiar with, in terms of gaining or collecting qualitative research? What are some other ways, that other aspects of the business can take, or how
Yeah,
can other aspects of the business, collect qualitative research?
when I worked for that retail company that was selling TVs, like uh, Platte TV.nl. Now I think now it's called Hello TV. Um, uh, we just took our forms and went to stores. They had 10 actual physical stores, so
Mhm.
it was also possible for us to see how much traffic we were actually sending to that store, and if it had a success by tracking somebody's location and pushing them to the nearest store. But if they came to the store, then we had like uh, two ways that we were doing user research. So the first one is, um, how did you get here? That's the first question. Was it the website, yes or no? But the second questions were following on how their journey was, um, and how is the expectation of the store meeting up with what we're telling is on the website, because then you can think about the entire journey, and also thinking about if it's in sync with what you're having on in the store. Um, so that was very interesting for us to see. And the second one is actually field research. So they were developing a new website, and we had some new ideas, and we just went into the stores and asked people, right, what uh, what do you prefer? How do you like this site, or do you like this? Do you find it more attractive or not?
And I was just curious to know, you know, maybe there isn't another answer to this, but I was curious to know like what other ways there are of collecting qualitative research or qualitative insights from like other teams on a in a company. But I suppose you answered that question. So
Yeah, and also having really getting in touch with your customer care team as well,
mm-hmm.
because they are getting questions. They might have really impactful feedback from customers, and it might not always be for the web, but it is something that you have to store in your learning environment, or your ideation process to see where it fits. Yeah, because if it's an actionable insight, it might not be for web, but it might be for logistics, for instance,
Or product
uh,
development, or yeah.
product development, especially stuff like that. Yeah, and that's for Beowulf. We um, also noticed that, and because Beowulf is part of Heineken, and it's also sitting right next to Heineken, that we noticed there wasn't really an interaction between like the Heineken experience, so that's the Heineken Museum sitting next to it, and like the Beowulf with the home draft systems. But we did have, for instance, the systems standing in the museum there. So it's important to not think about only about online touchpoint, but also think about offline touchpoints, because now they're experimenting with having QR codes in the museum next to the home draft systems to see if we can attract customers to our Beowulf website, and to interest them into purchasing a product for them at home.
I loved your take on how, moving away from a siloed optimization or CRO focused strategy within a company and moving towards more of an experimentation culture. I loved that the idea of, sharing all of your insights across the company so that everyone can utilize all of the work that everyone's done, and all of the insights everyone in the company has gained, and using that to help contribute to a common goal was all super interesting. Keeping the optimization alive in the future of AI and this new era that we're in. Aside from that, is there anything else you wanted to tell us about? Anything you've got going on in your life?
Yeah, I do have things going on in my life. So besides being a CXO specialist at Orange Valley, I'm also a firefighter. So
oh wow,
yeah, and of course, working hybrid really empowered me to also pursue that like a child dream of mine, which I weren't able to pursue because I used to have epilepsy, of course. And now when I work from home, I'm allowed to set my beeper on and be available for any kind of call or emergency call that's that I have to come up for.
Wow, that's really impressive. This is one of those things that, have you ever played that icebreaker game where you have to tell like four truth four things, and one of them's a lie and all of them are or whatever, one of them's true, all of them are lie? That would be a really great one to bring up.
So one thing so cool. I want to add to that, because being a firefighter really helped me get a certain focus and perspective on experimentation as well. So I'm not only experimenting on the website, but also experimenting with what I like. So for instance, pursuing that education of being a firefighter and etc. But it helped me because if you're training to become a firefighter, it's not only about fighting fires, right? It's not only about validation. It's not only about making something that doesn't work or that's breaking down, making sure or preventing it from breaking down. It's also about the safety care that you do, right? You have your emergency exit where you're doing like your pre-test and A/B testing. So if it doesn't work, you can just take the emergency exit. But you also have your weekly practice where you discuss the learnings with other teams and other corpses to understand what you can improve in your safety and how you can educate others to focus on your safety, and for instance have your smoke detector in your house to already prevent the fire from happening, right? And that's how it turns out that it's not only for you as a firefighter to make sure that the fire is out, but also educate others on how to put up your smoke detector in your house, so you can already understand that something is going on, even though when you're not aware of that it might have an effect in the future.
Mm-hmm. Preventative. Wow, that's super interesting. Really cool. I think you might be, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a whole, branch of that of people like you, but I think you might be the only person working in CXO or CSO who's a CRO who's also a firefighter.
For what I know, and now I haven't met anybody else. so for now it's my personal branding and a USP as a person, I think.
Something we put out fires on your website.
Yeah.
Nice. And I know you mentioned this a minute ago or a short while ago, but you said you were speaking at an upcoming conference.
Yeah, so the 8th of June, there's a conference called Digital Marketing Live in Amsterdam,
Mhm.
and I will be speaking together with one of a good client of us, the Heineken Experience. Um, and that part will be about the future of CRO. Also, a little bit about the topics that, or especially about the topics that we mentioned. But then I will also have some visual support with the models and templates I'm using for that. And we will talk a little bit on how uh, the Heineken experience is working on being more customer centric, listening to the voice of the customer and using that as input for their optimization process instead of only looking at data.
Hmm.
So that's a really interesting one if you want to really understand where optimization is heading to in the future.
I'm excited to try some Heineken and see if these, experiments or optimizations are improving the taste of the Heineken. My
Well,
partner's a brewer. Sorry,
oh
go ahead.
really?
Yeah, he's a brewer, and so he actually told me that a lot of Heineken is brewed not. It's brewed. Where is it brewed? I don't know. Somewhere in South America or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
different breweries. That's correct.
yeah, yes.
And also, what is nice to see if you're ever coming to Amsterdam with your partner is that they now have an experience now has a studio on top of their building, and it's called the Heineken Studio, where they have a roof terrace, and that's where they are experimenting with different flavors. So at that bar, you can have your Heineken beer cocktails. So
Mm.
they are selling beer cocktails now, and see how the audience of the Heineken experiences is, if they're liking it, and if they should pursue making different mixes of beer and flavors together.
Interesting. I like that. Well, we can diversify their data sample a little bit
Yeah.
if us Canadians show up there. Well, it was amazing talking to you and meeting you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm sure we'll be meeting again if we're in the experimentation world.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much and have a good rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.